Hey, hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, right? It doesn't feel like Wednesday, to tell you the truth. But what's going on, everybody? Digital meteorologist David Nazario back in the Digital Weather Center. I always do that wrong, the Digital Weather Center. And you can tell I'm a little more excited today. That's because today I went ahead and decided to blast out over on clickorlando.com not only the latest information on our polar vortex split, but another way too early look at the hurricane season of 2025. I've been putzing around behind the scenes talking with meteorologist Jonathan Kagas about some of the most recent up and comings. I'm not going to get into detail about that today and buffet you all with that information. Go ahead and head on over to clicko.com if you'd like to take a look at that article, or stay tuned for more discussions and theorizing here at the Digital Weather Center as we get closer in time, because truthfully, the reason I'm a little pumped about it is the fact that, shucks, like time is flying, folks. I can't believe that we're already just under 4 months and counting until the 25 season kicks off, and we're getting that much closer to not only transition season, but spring severe weather season, which is kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Kevin Hawthorne over on the News 6 YouTube channel. Good morning, as always, from Lakeland. Good to have you joining us, as well as Robert Frazier. Good morning, David. This is Robert over in Orange Park. Thanks so much for tuning in this morning, as well as those of you joining us over on News 6 Plus. We'll go ahead and rock right into this. Let's get started with the next big thing. As always, we got to start out with our weather headlines, consolidate everything for everybody. Let's take a look at what we've got on the docket for today. So today through Friday, as expected, as we talked about the last couple days, we do have just a couple of whispers of that lingering coastal fog. However, we have predominantly cleared out. The drive in this morning to the studio was a lot more pleasant. Didn't feel like I was in the midst of my own horror movie or an extension of Halloween back in October of last year. However, for some of our folks over in Volusia, maybe southern and eastern, the easternmost extent of Brevard County, right up against the shore there, we could get some of that sea fog trying to build back in, because we are going to continue to warm. As you can see, with the weekend ahead, we are really warming up. We just recently adjusted our 7-day forecast. We brought the temperatures back down a little bit to accommodate for all the increased cloud cover we're going to be seeing as we go through Monday and Tuesday of next week, with the approach of, get this, our next cold front. Now, it's not going to be as intense as the last few we had back in January, but we will kind of get a little comfier, if you will. I'll truthfully say some of the high temps I'm seeing on our computer models, and I'll show you that here as we get deeper into the brief, are getting very spring, almost early pseudo summer. I was seeing in values anywhere between 85 to 86 degrees. You factor in our relative humidity being up through the roof, and it'll almost feel like 90 flipping degrees out there in the early half of February. So at this point, I'm ready to say, Florida, we gotta pump the brakes a little bit. I know we just rapidly accelerated out of the Arctic blast, but we're not trying to get into summer this early. At least I'm not. I don't know about y'all. And then looking ahead, as I'd mentioned, we have that next front coming in before the pattern gets busy again. The pattern is indeed going to get busy, and I'll show you that here momentarily. First things first, if you look, our visibility is predominantly unrestricted right now. Still seeing some of that lingering cloud cover in the form of stratus now, right up against Brevard County there. You can see those clouds just off the coast, not impeding anyone's vision, but the fog is still out there, very slowly but surely lifting and burning off as we get a little warmer during the afternoon hours. And then I'll shift this over to our actual visibility model, and you'll see as we go through tonight into tomorrow morning, we get a little bit of that fog, just a little bit. You can see it up there in Flagler, Volusia County, some of it trying to build in towards Brevard. You see the visibility starting to drop just a tad. Sanford, Orlando, and Kissimmee looking at some possible fog, albeit I do think we'll see more of a mist event if anything becomes or comes together out there, condenses down at ground level. I think the model's overdoing it just a bit here. We saw the same thing with yesterday during the live weather update. I noted that it looked like interior Central Florida was forecast to drop in visibility again. That definitely wasn't the case. As I was driving in the middle of the dark, everything was fine. I could see as far as the eye could see, especially in the middle of the night on I-4 or wherever it is you're making your commute. So definitely nothing as immense as we saw during the morning hours of Monday and Tuesday. Here's our latest temperature outlook. You can definitely see we're going to get hot. We have been kind of going back and forth. It's pretty bizarre. This winter time has definitely been a no holds barred roller coaster, to tell you the truth. This is valid for February 13th through the 19th. And you can see that Central Florida, much of the peninsula, all the way down to our neighbors in South Florida, are completely smothered by the darkest shade of red possible there on the legend. That's how above average we're going to be. I'm actually kind of curious. I might, if I have time, might pull up the heat index forecast for next week. We already talked the surface temperatures and the humidity. Let's see what the feels like temperature could possibly be as we get deeper into the discussion, shall we? And then you can see our latest precipitation outlook, very on textbook or on par with our La Nina winter pattern. A lot of our stuff is going to stay to the north. We might get a stray shower or two, some isolated rainfall as we go through Monday and Tuesday with the approach of our next frontal system. But because of that west to east jet pattern, we're really not going to be given that frontal band, that nudge that it needs to get down through Central Florida. So mainly looking at increased cloud cover, a lot of warmth building in ahead of the frontal system. And I'll show you what our models are thinking in terms of just how much moisture and rainfall could try to slide its way through Central Florida. But to tell you the truth, not much. Not much. We are definitely singing in tune with the La Nina weather pattern. Here's a look at the water vapor. We'll go ahead and take you full screen so we can start to do our fun little doodles here. I hadn't broken out the pen just yet, but trust me, we're going to get into there right now. You can see a trough extending through the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, supporting their atmospheric river event. Here is that baroclinic feature that we highlighted off the West Coast yesterday. If you happen to tune in and talk weather with us at around 11:30 on your Tuesday morning, that system has now worked its way in, and it is continuing to quickly accelerate off towards the east, headed right through the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, through the Great Lakes. We still have our breakaway pocket of upper-level energy down there in the Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America, excuse me. I don't want to fall into that trap. Social media has been ablaze with all sorts of people getting lit up for saying Mexico, America, back and forth, back and forth. We'll just call it the Gulf and mind our P's and Q's for everybody out there. But we still have our breakaway bubble of energy down there that's trying to sling some extra moisture, humidity, and cloud cover in our general direction, which is why we will mainly remain partly cloudy as we go through the rest of the week, with clouds building in even further as we go into the early periphery of next week. So nothing, too eventful out there on the satellite imagery right now. Just some very interesting features to keep track of as we await the break apart of the polar vortex. Radar outside, kind of probably guessed it. Nothing really happening on the radar today, and we're not expecting anything to pop up, even though it is fairly warm since we're underneath that subtropical high pressure. This is not the type of pattern where we would typically see our daytime thunderstorms, let alone our sea breeze, begin to take effect. And that's something else I also wrote as a very quick blurb in my tropical weather outlook earlier today over on clickorlando.com, is the fact that some of the major heavy hitters that we're going to be monitoring the trends for as we go through the rest of February, March, April, May, leading into June for the hurricane season, they could also have implications on our rainy season as well. Just to give you just a fine piece of that info, we have some of our climate models depicting a return to an ENSO neutral, which again could also have implications on the hurricane season and where we see systems develop, where they track, what our pressure centers do. The latest European seasonal outlook from the ECMWF, the European model for short, actually has us building back into a El Nino, which if that's the case, if we do see an El Nino, not only will the summertime be very different for us, again, in comparison to last year, but it'll also have possible dangerous consequences once we do get back into fall and winter time. Obviously, way out in time. Time's already ripping by, so I'm not trying to accelerate it any more than it already is, but just kind of throwing it out there so you all are picking up what I'm putting down and we can track the trends together. So here's a latest look at our upper air pattern before we get into our first break. You can see that west to east jet flow is still ongoing. This right here, that little split flow there where the white lines begin to spread apart in the upper levels, that is where that baroclinic feature is, that area of lower pressure and temperature discontinuity that I circled in for you on the water vapor shot. You can see that large swath of moisture there on the satellite translates over wonderfully when we look at our jet stream winds and our 500 millibar heights, or what the atmosphere looks like vertically at about 20 to 30,000 feet. Just to the south of there, we have a very interesting and very familiar phenomena for me going on right through here. If you look, there's some kinking in the lines right there through Colorado into New Mexico, as well as over the Sierra Nevadas of California and Nevada. That there is cross barrier flow. And that's the traditional cross barrier flow. The reason I bring that up is if you've been following the wildfire event down in Southern California during a majority of the last month, that was what was going on in the local area of SoCal. Since we had the winds coming in out of the northeast, they were flowing over top the mountain range just outside of the greater LA area, creating those Santa Ana winds, the downsloping, the warming and the drying as they descend the mountain slopes. That's your more textbook downsloping event. So I know my friends and previous compatriots down there at the 25th OWS in Tucson are probably watching for strong non-convective winds for our assets up there near the Reno area, as well as the Front Range of Colorado, Colorado Springs, the Air Force Academy, and all that fun jazz. As we go further in time, you can see Jonathan Kagas put out a beautiful video yesterday evening over on the Just Weather YouTube channel talking about how February is going to start to get busy as we get into the middle and latter half of the month. If you look, our pattern completely flips upside down once again as we get closer to the Valentine's Day weekend, February 14th. It does land on a Friday this year, so if you do have a significant other or somebody you want to go and pamper, or if it's a singles awareness day for you, still, either way, Friday night, go out and have some fun. Looking at some pretty solid weather over here in Florida. The rest of the country, however, is going to have to do battle with what's going to be happening to our jet stream, and eventually that'll make its way down into Florida, where you can see the pattern gets even more aggressive after Valentine's Day, bringing down a pretty dominant shortwave trough right there. I'm circling with my mouse. I'm not showing you all. There you go. That puppy right there, it is positively tilted. And remember, when I start to use those very sophisticated terms, easy way to remember positive versus negative. Positive tilt, that's good news. That's fine. It's not going to be as crazy of a weather predictor or weather producer. Negative tilt, as the name implies, it's going to have negative consequences, and it's probably going to be a bit more of a significant weather occurrence if it were to take on that negative tilt, where this would be pretty much oriented this way as opposed to northeast to southwest. That's what I mean when I say positive, negative. So we're going to be watching that as we get through the middle and latter portions of February. But all in all, for now, the biggest piece of the puzzle, the biggest component we'll be tracking and pinpointing for you all over the next 7 to 10 days is going to be the warmth. We are just going to continue to warm as that negative pattern with the ridge out east and the troughing out west remains in place. It is not going anywhere anytime soon. So when we come back from our 2-minute break, we'll talk a bit more about the temperatures, what our rain chances look like over the next 7 days, give or take, and just how much of this weather phenomena with the polar vortex breaking down could actually make its way into Florida, or will we just continue to miss out on winter and try to get a jump start on our spring season? So don't go anywhere, folks. We will be right back. All right, welcome back. The 2 minutes are up once again. They flew by. So let's talk temperatures. And that's what we're going to focus on for the back end of the briefing. And then we'll take a quick glance at what chances we have at some much needed rain before the heat really accelerates the drought conditions that are going to try to sneak back into Central Florida. So here is the big picture temperature anomaly chart. And you could see that the country is split in half for all intents and purposes. We have the warmth over the south, especially the southernmost portions of the United States from SoCal through to Florida. And then the cold is trying to intrude on Montana, the Dakotas, getting back into the plains, and the northeast United States. You can clearly see that negative PNA as we go further and further through time, with that colder air remaining over the west and the warmth just dominating out east until our next frontal system can try to make an appearance. But even then, it just doesn't quite have the gusto to bully that warmth out of the way until the polar vortex can fully break down within the next 10 days. Now you can see a bit more of a textbook wintertime setup with those darker shades of violet, purple, and pink making their way in their presence known through the Great Plains, trying to get down to us. But if you look, it looks like Florida, once again, is not really getting on the memo. They're not on the same page down there. We're going to be sticking out like the sore thumb that we are. We may not even get enough of that cold air through the Carolinas and Georgia. So we're going to have to watch this very closely to see if our temperatures will truly sink again, or are we just going to stay in the upper 70s, low 80s for the foreseeable future. It looks like there's a shot, but a lot of the models are very back and forth on whether or not the cold air is going to have as much of a presence and as much punch as we saw through the months of January. I personally do think with this polar vortex flattening out and broadening out and spreading apart into multiple different circulations, we will get a mixing of colder air down here, but it's not going to be much. Our morning lows are going to end up in the mid to upper 50s versus the 60s. And then as we go through the day, maybe getting into the mid 70s. So like I'd said at the very beginning, just a little more comfortable weather as opposed to having to crank the AC after we just got done turning on our heaters, possibly for the first time. So here's a look at the future radar courtesy of the GFS. This is the 6Z. I'm watching the 12Z coming in. And in fact, if you want, let's go ahead and take a look at the 12Z together. We're going to go against the grain a little bit. Let me pull that up for y'all, and we'll see what we got on the 12Z. I always use the 6Z with our in-house computer system, but it sometimes takes a little while to pull that up for you. So let me bring myself back over while I pull that in. And we have about 2/3 of the model data in already. So here we go. This is on Cyclonic WX, cyclonicweather.com, a free to use website. So if you'd like to refer to it yourself, if you have the spare time, then by all means. But let's go ahead and sift through time. So there's your west to east pattern there. You can see there's a bunch of the blue lines stacked right up against one another, running parallel to parts of Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, going through the northern plains, the lower Great Lakes, up to the east coast with that next frontal system. And then notice as we get into the weekend and next week, there's that front that could try to bring down some rainfall for us. But see, even the latest GFS here, this is now going into Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. It doesn't make it down as far south as Florida. We're still underneath all the warmth. In fact, if you look down there, right over top the Central Florida Peninsula, we have that red 570 right over our heads, the 570 line. And that is the bona fide rule of thumb for where your subtropical air mass is. It's going to be anywhere between 564, which is north of us, and then that 570 line. But they taught us that for the subtropical jet and where your bona fide tropical air is, that's where you'll usually find it on a weather chart. And you can see we are bathed in it. So it is going to be warm as we go through Monday, Tuesday, and even Wednesday of next week. But then look at that monstrosity that's forming to our northwest. GFS is thinking we could get some much needed rainfall in maybe by Thursday, very early Friday morning, depending on if that holds together. But even then, there's really not much out there in terms of cold air. That negative PNA is still holding steady. And I'm very impressed at the fact that there's really nothing in terms of wintry weather. It looks like the models have retrograded back to the north, and all of our storm systems, strong storm systems, don't get me wrong, are going to stay well to the north of us. So this leads me to believe that our pattern is not going to break down as substantially as earlier predictors were suggesting, which does make sense. We're getting into February now, so there could still be some cold outbreaks, but nothing nearly like we had in December and in January because we're just only getting closer to transition season. We're gaining daylight, so the days are going to be a little bit longer, a little bit warmer, and as a result, the cold isn't going to quite stick around or invade like it would have earlier on. Still could have some brief stints, I'll call them, of colder temps, but not much. We'll be predominantly right at about average, if not above average, it looks like, for 2 to 3 weeks now. And here we go. Here are your temperatures. You can see for the warmest part of the day tomorrow, still sitting around 83, 84 degrees across central Florida. Fast forward to the weekend, we'll go to Saturday, your Saturday afternoon, if you have any outdoor plans. Still primarily comfortable. It does look like it could be a very good beach type of weekend. Cape Canaveral sitting at 71, Cocoa Beach at 71, and then look at the difference as you get closer to the very densely populated and urban areas closer to the attractions, the Orlando airport, through Seminole County, parts of Flagler, Sumter County, yeah, even all the way up to Marion County up there. We're at 82 degrees in Ocala, 83 in the Villages. And then check this out. As we go even further into next week, look at the high temps for Monday. Look at that, 85 in Orlando, 84 in Kissimmee, 85 in Lakeland. The beach is definitely where you want to be. That onshore flow is going to keep things a little bit cooler out there as a response to that high pressure that's going to be building in off the coast. And then look at that. Temperatures on your Tuesday afternoon, 86 degrees. 86 is the general average out there for Central Florida. And now, bear with me. I just want to do this out of curiosity. This wasn't part of my briefing, but I'm going to pull it up anyways because I'm curious now. Let's take a look at the heat index. I really want to see what the heat index is looking like as we go through the next few days, because that's going to be very interesting to see, especially, here we go, especially with what the temperatures are looking like on Monday and Tuesday. So let's see if I can fast forward through time. Not going to quite make it there, but regardless, you can see over the next few days, your Thursday afternoon, you're going to feel like we're in the mid-80s across the board. Friday afternoon, mid-80s once again. You can see the shades of orange starting to pop up for where it is going to be warmer out. Let me see if I can pull up the GFS, go a little further in time, or perhaps I might want to pull it up on a third-party site and see. Let's see if I can get that on here. Might not be able to. I don't believe heat index is on our global models. Stand by. Let me take a look on here. Yeah, no. I'm not going to do the calculations and waste our time right now. I'll go ahead and save that for another point in time. But regardless, it's definitely, the name of the game is warmth. Warmth is definitely going to be incoming for Florida, and it's going to be sticking around. Here is a look at your pinpoint accurate forecast before we get ready to wrap up your 7 days. You can see that Monday and Tuesday, we've brought the temperatures down a little bit, but we may want to revisit bumping them up just a smidge. We're talking maybe going from 83 to 84, and then from 84 to 85 on Tuesday. RJGESQ over on YouTube says, spring is here. It almost feels like it. Tomorrow, keep an eye out on clickorlando.com. I'm going to be writing a story about how spring is trying to arrive for Central Florida, and that's why you're probably noticing a lot of your cars and outdoor lawn pieces, flowers, plants, anything you have sitting outside like the barbecue, lawn chairs, etc., are bathed, are smothered in that very fine dust of yellow. That's all the pollen out there. I went like this as I was detailing my car yesterday, and good Lord, now I know why my nose has been so stuffed up. My eyes just won't seem to stop itching. But with that, such is another weather brief. That will conclude our daily weather update. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your Wednesday morning to join me here in the Digital Weather Center, both on News 6 Plus and over on our News 6 YouTube channel. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to drop them in the comments section down below. Upon the conclusion of this live stream over the next few days, if you would like, head on over to WX Center_Nazario over on YouTube. It's been a bit of a quiet channel. I've been focusing more on my News 6 content, but I will be building our next Tropics discussion, Tropics talk over there for everyone to kind of talk about what we have in terms of model data, the trends, and how things are stacking up since we started to investigate back in December to now in February. But if anything, if not, we'll see you again tomorrow. RJG over on YouTube says, keep up the live streaming. We absolutely will. It's a pleasure to have everybody tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. I hope Hump Day treats you well and you've had a good start to the week, the first full week of February. And we'll see you again soon. But until then, y'all know the saying, and it's not hold on to your butts this time. It is the Digital Weather Center signing out.